welcome to the very 7th Back Pocket Game Club. The Game Club is where we pick a game to go on to play through on stream. And then at the end of the month, or at the beginning of the next month, we can go deep on that title, full spoiler mode, and break it down as much as we want. I'm Nick Richardson, and today I'm joined by Gus Ronald, Stephanie Ben-Dixon, and Peter Burns. Oh my goodness.
The mulletless.
The mulletless Peter Burns. Just
no wig.
Never happened.
No wig.
You'd look great with a mullet, though. Can I say it would suit big time.
Let's not put ideas in his head as the person who has to be married to the mullet man.
That's true.
Mullet man.
The mullet man.
Hey, put your hands up if you finished the game literally 5 minutes ago.
Good. Hands up if you finished the game 5 hours ago.
Put your hands up if you got 3/4 of the way through and didn't finish the game, but you watched Peter play the rest of it and you really liked everything you saw.
Including
Nice.
Peter.
Including Peter's running commentary. Mwah.
Nice.
And put your hands up if all of that would have been better.
Double hands.
All right, the November Back Pocket Game Club, in case you haven't guessed, was Guardians of the Galaxy, a romp across the universe with a group of people who annoy each other as much as the Back Pocket crew. And speaking of, I refuse to let this episode go by. I refuse without bringing up everyone's favorite designer of worlds and builder of avatars, Timothy Chu. So thank you, Timothy, for sponsoring the Game Club and bringing this ragtag space occupying crew together for one last job. So it's not one last job because this is in the end. And also tech wasn't the end of the Guardians as well, but it also wasn't the beginning. It was kind of like the beginning-ish, like a year in.
It seemed like that. It was like the perfect amount of, I don't know where this is meant to be starting, but I like that I know enough about all these people to still want to relearn it all, I guess. Yeah, that feels about right.
Yeah, that feels about right. Guardians of the Galaxy, the official description from the Guardians game website says that your newly formed bag of legendary misfits is set to save the universe in this fresh but faithful take on the Guardians of the Galaxy. Somehow, you set off a chain of catastrophic events leading to a wild ride through mind-blowing worlds inhabited by iconic and original Marvel characters. Turn up the all-star 80s mixtape and get ready to kick it. Peter Burns was the lead on the game this month, our resident Marvel skeptic. Let's see how he coped with Peter Quill and the gang.
Where are we? Yeah, we are. All right.
Man on the run! He's got good ghost tears, no one!
This is very cool. Look at you, stud. Looks like my cousin. Sexy boy. Little sword. Little hair. Cool everything.
50 units says I
He's wearing some suit! Amazing!
Bye-bye, little guy! Hey!
Yeah. Ah, man. This is so the game that I need right now. I love a floppy wrist. Look. Is that an infinity stone? Is that Vision's head? Ah!
Bet you can't do this.
I cannot do that. Not in real life, not in video game. Oh man, I'm missing out on some cool licensed music. Let me just for like 5 seconds. La 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 la! Oh my god, fucking seagulls are right so far away! Indianos!
Do not got this. Now
He's fucking baller, man. Holy shit, get her! No! Cheekbones for days.
Fine's non-negotiable.
8,000 units, you fucking what?
Ship.
Uh-oh. They're getting upgraded? Holy shit. We don't know. Kiss. Is she gonna get over there? How? Is that a massive dude in a cape? This one. I love this whole house. That's actually, it's called Stippling? What the fuck, this bath? That's so decadent. And this massive fern. Someone's been cutting the little black bits off the ends of the fern. Someone loves this plant. Is that the house we're in? Oh, I want to be here. Nice tight nipple shot here.
I am sensing irritation from you.
Before we get properly started.
Broken promise of all
Not yet spent.
Voice sounds just like
What if
Little
we
Will.
get there and it's compromised?
That was you?
Yeah, of course I did. Cool, I'm glad you picked it.
Yeah, nice man. Good work.
The ball's in the middle.
Fucking dodgy. What? toasty on these
Really
spaceships.
wouldn't know.
I find punching flesh much
I think he's dying.
intrigued by a church as I am right now.
This game's easy.
Trying.
Little one is missing. Perhaps he died like your son.
Nikki,
What a twist!
I really need them to fuck. In the game,
Back
just
to her
once.
until-
I would kiss that face if it woke me up that close. I would no longer kiss the face. Oh, fuck yeah!
It's a doggy.
Oh yeah, tickle his pecs, his jiggly pecs. Oh. They die easy. They're just fog after all. Ah! It's Nick Boy when he finally dyes his hair blonde. The Fan Man. Oh, Jesus on me.
Yeah, we did it! I love this game!
Perfect. Das Goskanot called Volmaki Ultach Goth and Gogalmak. There's the dragon. Where did we get these fucking outfits? Oh shit. You know how fragile cassettes are? Oh, she looks fucking awesome. She went Super Saiyan. What the fuck? I'm not holding my gun. Why? This is my favorite ending to a video game ever. Those little fucking tails.
We'll voyage through the...
Just shoot him in the back of the head. The game's not over. Boom. Ding.
You guys paid your fine, right?
Did it.
Very good. All right.
Very
Well,
good.
let's go around the room and get a quick temperature check. I feel like I already know the answer to this based off that montage alone. But Peter, how did you feel about Guardians of the Galaxy?
I adored Guardians of the Galaxy against all expectation. I think it is a I have to call it a masterpiece, even though there's so much wrong with the
Wow.
game. It's just everything it needed to nail, it absolutely nails, and I just adore it. I adore it.
Steph, it's fresh in the mind. How about you?
Yeah, I was so surprised at how much I enjoyed this. And I'm really glad that we played it for Game Club because it's not, probably I would not have picked it up otherwise. Because like, I've seen all the Marvel movies, but I wouldn't say I'm like a huge like Marvel super nerd. And Guardians of the Galaxy I enjoyed, but I feel like through this game, I got a better understanding of these characters and what's special about them as a group than I have from any of the films. And I kind of wish that this version of the characters are what we saw on screen, even though those people don't exist, because I'm so much more endeared to these characters now, having gone on this journey with them. And it was funny, and it was surprising, and it was emotional, and it was sweet. And yeah, I'm stoked.
Gus, I would say that the game continues in its last quarter as strong as it has in the first three. So even though you didn't finish it, how did you feel about the game?
Yeah, I echo both what Pete and Steph said. Purely a timing hiccup with me in terms of getting it finished, not for not wanting to enjoy it and play it. I think Steph saying surprising is perfectly summed it up for me in terms of I went into it with the same sort of apprehensiveness that Pete had in terms of thinking it was going to be a kind of like I kept tying it to the Avengers game currently out in my brain, just in a gameplay wise. It just looked like it was going to be a kind of single player built in that engine kind of vibey kind of game. But I was so surprised with the story, and the voice acting, and the amount of voice acting, the amount of character development that is in there, to be like absolutely in love with the characters up until the point that I got to, that I then have, as I said, seen where it goes, but I'm dying to get back in there because married it with a gameplay style that I didn't realize I loved so much of this sort of arena fighter. I was like, oh my God, I don't think I remember playing a game that has this kind of style of gameplay in it since like a crappy Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle knockoff game from like the mid 2000s. I'm like, but I love it. It's like junk food. I just loved every bit of that. So yeah, I came out of where I got to just grinning from ear to ear. So I can't wait to keep going. And I told Pete earlier, I'm diving back in to get through this by the end of the year, I think.
Well, we're all on the same page. Adore this game. Was so surprised by this game. I definitely agree with Steph that like the Guardians films, I enjoyed them, but they never really. There was something about them. It just felt like I feel like they were always trying really hard, and particularly Chris Pratt was trying really hard to be funny. Drax was trying really hard to be funny. Gamora was really boring. Groot and Rocket were the only two that I was interested in because I really liked their dynamic. And when this started, I was like, I don't know. This feels like it's probably the same thing, and I really didn't vibe with Peter Quill at the beginning. Like I think I said it on the show when we first started playing. I was just like, oh, this guy's just so whatever. I think he's now my favorite protagonist I've played in a video game in years. He is so like he has such a great balance of like leadership and naivety and doofusness and heart and courage. He's just like the game is so goddamn funny. I think that the big takeaway for me, and we've all kind of hit on it, is the idea of like it feels like, if not the films, a better realization of the films. And I think that that's because this game is really cinematic. I don't necessarily think cinematic in terms of the way that it displays its set pieces, because I do think that in a lot of the way that it was like shot and a lot of the way that cutscenes are put together, it's quite static a lot of the time. It's just like lots of just almost weirdly angled shots. Sometimes I feel like you can feel the budget there. But in terms of feeling like I'm watching a genuine narrative unfold as opposed to a collection of cutscenes linking together gameplay, like this truly was a piece of cinema that went for 14 hours. And I just adored it so much. Jules J, also completely on our side with this as well, in our Discord, said started today and obviously she didn't start today. She started a while ago.
That's wrong.
And said, well, the balance also really enjoyed it as well. Started today and wow, this game is exceeding all my expectations. Love the set pieces, love the mechanics, love the art style. I do have to say though, the constant bickering in the party is really starting to wear on. And I do think the bickering is a key part of the Guardians franchise. Gus, you like movies. How did this interpretation of the crew land for you?
So much better than the flarking movies, I should say, because like you guys both said, I actually really didn't care for both the Guardians films. I know there's a lot of people out there that love them, but they just did not gel with me at all. A big part about that was what you said, Nick, in terms of the forcing the comedy, the writing, and the way that the films tried to make these characters have it's an hour and a half or whatever it turns out to be to rush these relationships and this chemistry. Whereas what the game does with its characters, like we mentioned at the start, is it dives in. They're already established. They're not the forming of the Guardians, and it's such a nicer way to do it. Yes, the films have been there, so people have at least a comprehension of who they are. But that meant we didn't have to go through the meeting and rejection and who they are. And so they were already friends. But I do think, like particularly with like Gamora and Drax at the start, they are still getting to. They're the toughest relationship still, that they don't trust each other. So there is still a little sort of hangover from the original, but not in the way that the films really just constant dialogue that just felt so static and slow. Whereas here, the bickering is what I love the most. Like, it was my favorite thing. And I loved that there were so many characters talking all the time through all moments of the game, be it cutscene, be it like just... If you left the game alone for too long, they would just have these little bickerings and stuff like that. There was some great
endless dialogue and voice acting to cover those moments, and I wonder how much we didn't hear because there's so much happens when you just leave the controller on the table and walk away to get a drink or something, and if you're just powering through, I wonder how much of that you would miss.
And again,
I cannot
in the comparison
how
to the
much
film,
is actually there.
Yeah, to compare it to the films where it's just like, none of the lines ever landed for me in the films. Whereas here, so much of it was so brilliantly written, and they played into all those stereotypes of Drax being literal and Rocket being snarky, and they just felt so much more natural. Yes, there's more time to to become accustomed to that, I guess. But even out of the gate, I just found it so they were just nailing it. And the last thing, Nick, that I wanted to say to what you said about like the cutscenes felt static, but the voice acting and the timing of the voice acting was beautiful. There was crosstalk, there was interrupting, there was like, it wasn't that BioWare-y Bethesda sometimes just like one person talks, other person talks. It's like they were genuinely having conversations together, and it felt so natural that by the end, when someone's bickering off in the distance or something, it felt like, that's what that squad would do, and I freaking loved it.
Yeah, and I think like for me as well, you talk about how the characters have had more time to develop. I think like that's absolutely true and fair, but I think that just it's too lenient on the films. The films should be able to execute having characters deeper than, cardboard thin, and they just don't. But Drax in particular in this like is a I was going to say human. I don't think he is human, but is a much, much deeper character. And you know that from, you can hear it in the voice acting. You can hear it in the dialogue that he's given, in that he's not just a punchline. He's such a punchline in the films, and I always found that so disappointing. Because I actually think Dave Bautista is a very good actor as well. But he's just always there for a gag, and to make fun of him. Like,
he's always
the characters
the butt
don't necessarily. The characters don't necessarily make fun of him, but he is the butt of the joke for the audience watching, and he's not that here. He's like, you can sense the intelligence behind how, even though he is very like taking things at face value, there's still a consciousness behind it, as opposed to just being a bit. And then to talk about pacing, like I just think this game just had enough time to tell a really like compelling story. It could have been half the time. Like, we see Call of Duty campaigns are 5 or 6 hours, and I was kind of expecting it to be that. Like, I was expecting it to be a popcorny kind of story. But it really gives the story the time it needs to land its impact, and in doing that gives the characters heaps of time to grow to like each other, for you to grow to like them. I just think the pacing of it was really, really solid.
The liking each other too, like in the film, even in the second one, I don't feel like they really are friends or they like each other. There's always so many moments of them having sort of antagonistic moments, whereas like they just felt like such good friends in this, even when things were really going really bad or they were still bickering and stuff. It's like, and I think a huge part of that comes from what you said, Nick, of the Star-Lord not being an absolute dick, like not being a super, like he's arrogant, sure, but he doesn't do it to the extent that the films make him unlikable, in my opinion. I know, again, people love that, but here he is literally the gel that binds the team, and it's just, that's his role, and I loved him for it.
Well, I think that too is, sorry.
No, go, Steph.
Sorry, I think too a big part of that is that you're given options here on how to play him. There are dialogue choices where you can choose the dicky kind of arrogant response, or you can be a little bit more humble, or kind of or like include, like share the victory with your teammates and stuff like that. I think what made this such a success from a storytelling point of view, because I think that's what surprised me, is that the storytelling in a lot of Marvel stuff, I feel like from the films is very light because they have to condense it into a short period of time. But so much of the way we got to know these characters was done through talking about each other's feelings, and that was really nice. And it really speaks to how video games are evolving based on what people want from characters, because previously you would have a lot of characters or video game protagonists were very dark and brooding, and they have a tortured past, and they don't talk much, and they have all of this kind of pent up rage, and we're kind of like getting behind them as a hero because they've suffered, and even though they're not like super vocal, we can see the pain in their eyes. Whereas this was very much like everyone had their own sort of story, and you're rewarded as a player for kind of really investigating those opportunities, and every time you got the chance to kind of check in with someone, you were rewarded with a little bit more trust from them and a little bit more of that backstory that was really nice. And that was like all of the little props and things that you kind of picked up in the world, or the things that you kind of went out of your way to find. At one point, I spent the money that we had on a doll for Gamora. At somewhere on Nowhere, I went into a little shop and I bought a doll for her, which was weird because I was like, but I remember her saying at some point that she collected dolls, and so we bought it for her. And then I didn't really think about it after that. But then later on, when I was walking around the ship and I kind of just walked into her room, I was like, oh, there's the doll that I bought her. And then when I picked it up, she came in behind me and was like, hey, I wanted to say thank you. And then she started kind of launching into this really kind of elaborate, painful backstory of her, and Thanos used to give her these gifts when she was a child. And it was really, really wonderful. And even when you weren't kind of getting those big moments, it was like you always had the opportunity to be like, hey, how are you feeling? We just didn't have a chance to talk after, you had that sort of experience back there that must have been really hard for you. It's like therapy every single time. And so like the team becomes this really kind of wonderful multi-dimensional group because they're all so different as characters, but you're totally investing in each of them emotionally by like making sure that they're all feeling
without
okay.
that video game trope of them so often saying, I don't want to talk about it now, or I just can't, or something. It's like everyone is open as an open book in this and wants to talk to you or tell you this stuff. And so I found that so less frustrating than other video games where it's like, let's just sort of keep that till later on. It's like everyone's talking about everything all the time, and it's really refreshing.
I think that Steph, you said that it's a sign of like how far video games have come, and I agree in terms of this, but I almost feel the opposite. It's a sign of like how video games are still so often the same, that this is so refreshing.
This
like
stands out.
Yeah, because I think that the biggest thing that this has is an arc. Like each character has an arc that they actually go on, like, and that they genuinely take the time to make sure that each character's arc gets redeemed. Like even if it's as simple as something like Rocket getting over his fear of water, it is something that is like set up multiple times in a sort of fun way, and like good narrative is set up in an incidental fun way multiple times until it then becomes a problem and that needs to be overcome. And that you just don't see that in video games most of the time. And I think, Gus, to your point, how the dialogue always feels like it's overlapping and genuine and this back and forth banter, it's my number one favorite thing in video games when they nail that. I think we've been lucky this year with 2 games between Deathloop and this of being so strong when it comes to an identity in the way that their characters speak and the way that the dialogue is performed. Absolutely loved it. I did, there were some moments where it was like, because the meme of this is like the characters don't shut up, and I loved that they didn't. I loved that they were always talking, but the only problem I had with that is there was so much dialogue that it would often be like you would be running and I would often be boosting my way to like the next objective thing, and they would be halfway through a sentence and then they would just like stop and someone else would start talking about the next like triggered plot thing. Or there was one, I wish I clipped it at one of the like last fights I did. There was a moment where all 5 of them said basically 2 versions of their like battle cry catchphrases all at once at the end, and I literally dropped the controller and went suddenly I pulled my headphones off because I had 5 people screaming at me at once. But I would much prefer that to the idea of a game that feels empty and barren. Yeah, totally. We've been speaking about it as though it's a film. Of course, it is a video game, and there is tons of gameplay in it. I think for me, the gameplay was the weakest part of the game. About halfway through the game, I actually went into the menus and turned everything onto the easiest possible thing. There's actually quite a great level of adjustability when it comes to like how you want to increase or decrease the challenge you have. It wasn't because I was having any difficulty with the combat. It was just because I was like, it feels really button mashy to me. It feels a bit like a brawler game, and I really don't like brawlers. And I kind of just, to me, the gameplay really was something that was just not necessarily getting in the way, but the gameplay was the filler for me to get to the next story beat. So I did pull it down. But Gus, you said that you are really vibing with it.
I love that, and I can see how it can feel samey, and like even to the point where I got to, it was getting a bit repetitive. But I think they were getting to the point where they were adding enough new abilities and enough new weapon types and attack types within each kind of like zone to start to give you something to wrap your head around each time. But I love that kind of like mob management kind of fighter that, and then again I really respect the game's choice to say, hey, you're going to have all of your other Guardians with you as abilities, essentially, to juggle. Instead of... a big part of me thought this game was going to be just a Peter Quill shooter with maybe, like, the ability to get some help from other characters. And then I'm really glad it never broke off from not having them too often. Like, there were times that Gamora runs off or something and you didn't have her, but I liked that it didn't really drip feed you that super slowly. It was I think the only real fight I could remember was in Nowhere, where you've got no one and then they come one by one back into the fight. But it's like, I appreciated that these were your abilities expanding through characters, and I found that fun because it stops being about like the shooting that you're doing as you circle strafe a target is not really as important as the everything else you're doing. That's just kind of keeping your brain busy while you're juggling the abilities, and it just ended up being so over the top and bombastic. It was a way to make every fight feel reasonably epic that I can't remember a game, as I said, apart from like a weird Ninja Turtles game that had done this kind of thing where you are 5 or 4 characters at once. And I think it's a kind of lost game style that I really enjoyed, because the opposite, as I said, of being a solo third person action game, I think would have been incredibly dull. But but again, I only got really to a certain amount of the abilities and stuff, and I loved everything I got. The ultimates that you do get and everything, I think were like a great addition near the tail end. But obviously,
well, also Matty G 1991 in the chat said to that point of the narrative growth. I love that to unlock the ultimate abilities of the characters, you had to complete their emotional growth, and I think that was so smart. Pete, you said it was rewarding for you.
Yeah, it was definitely mashy. I totally understand that. But I feel like by the end of the game, it definitely had developed into, at least at like whatever difficulty I was at. And it was interesting that we can talk a little bit more about the difficulty options, but wherever I was playing, it felt like a really good balance of being like, not punishing, but also like I had to use some strategy. It was like, okay, those mobs I should try and stagger. So I'll get Drax to use his like high stagger abilities on them and then clear out the rest of the ads before like focusing back in on the boss. And I felt like there were fights that were tough if you didn't play in that way. And so I felt like at least the game encouraged you to use the tools that it was giving you, as opposed to just being like, here's more to mash with. It was, they did specific things, and if you use them correctly, you were rewarded for that. I do love that the difficulty settings were so deep in like, and you know, you're talking about how having been bombarded by voices. One of the settings is of the difficulties how frequently your teammates egg you on in battle, or kind of feed information to you. And it's like, we got to shoot the bad guy. It's like, no shit. But it's like you can that's a slider of like how frequently they push you
hit the guy with the shields and
exactly,
because he's healing the other ones, like
clever.
And they were cool, they were clever with that dialogue as well. They weren't like just telling you what to do. They'd be like, oh man, is this guy just going to keep bringing these guys back all the time? What's the deal, you know? And you'd be like, oh yeah, okay. But I feel like I couldn't decide whether I wished that I was myself moving between characters and controlling them, or if I was okay with there were moments where I was like trying to manage this huge group of enemies, and I would hear lines like Drax being like, I'm being underused in this fight. And I'd be like, Drax wouldn't in real life, he wouldn't wait for me to tell him what to do. So that, from like a weird lore perspective, felt strange that so like constantly my guardians were going, let me at him. Like I'm just waiting to like have my turn or whatever. And it seems weird that I have to constantly be feeding them in like, you know, direction on who to fight and what to hit. But I understand that that's a function of the gameplay, but part of me wishes that I could have just kind of swapped between those characters and controlled them in the combat myself.
Or put them on use your abilities, your self mode, or one of the other difficulty options was how much time slows down when you go into the
wheel.
Team wheel.
Yeah.
And it goes all the way down to time just freezes, which
really?
I considered doing because of how much fun strategizing was. And it's like, I'm just going to stop the game for a second and go like, I'm going to cast that over there, that over there, that over there. Because you can cast 5 things at once when everyone's up. So it's like, you can really just like, boom, like explode the battlefield, which is, I always found really satisfying.
It didn't gel with me for quite a while because I kept thinking these were like abilities with huge cooldowns. And it was quite surprising early on to realize how often they are regenning and how you can just spam these attacks and just keep throwing something like Gamora's like early on, her just like stab attack is just like instant kill. I'm like, oh, it's back again. I just kept using it. I'm like, this is great. It never felt like, okay, this is a really, like, there is strategy, but it wasn't to the point of like, I'm going to save this one up, apart from the Huddle, which, you know, I tried to spam like crazy. But Pete, I know you never got the same level of enjoyment that the rest of us did.
Well, yeah, I didn't even realize that it would play a good or bad song, really. Chat was like, it plays a song here. I was like, I don't really know what you mean. But like, yes, I've watched footage since, and it's like, oh shit, like you are scored with like an 80s tune for the rest of the fight.
Yeah. At one point after a Huddle, we built this city, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's like coastal energy is fueling this fight. But I was singing our lyrics to it while I was fighting.
my first one, knowing that was a mechanic in the game, I was really excited when it charged up. I was like, let's do this, and we'll talk, I guess, about like what we thought about that as a because a lot of people mentioned it was a bit too much of an interrupt in the game. But the first one I did, I picked the wrong one. They all booed me, and then it played. I got rickrolled. It played Rick Astley, Never Gonna Give You Up, and I was like, this is still a great song, and ran around. I was like, this is awesome.
I'm trying to remember, what was it? It was Oh, yep, that was the Huddle for me, I got really annoyed with the Huddle because of the massive thing you have to do before you get to the song, like the whole like answering the questions and blah. I was just like, oh, I wish I could, because I'm never gonna fail this. I'm never gonna fail this dumb fucking thing. So I actually after the first couple,
I definitely failed it once.
Yeah, right. I was just like, yeah, I know what you want me to do here. But so I used it a couple of times. Then I just went, oh, I'm going to stop using it. Like, it doesn't really matter. And then I got about 3/4 of the way through the game, and I was like, oh, I'll try it again, because it is a fun conceit. Like, the first time I had it, I think I had White Wedding, and then the second time I had like Never Gonna Give You Up or something like that. Yeah. And then I was like, I'll do the Huddle. Sat through the Huddle, resenting the Huddle the whole time, and then it comes back, and I'm like, time for a banging 80s song, and I got Bobby McFerrin's "Don't Worry, Be Happy." So don't worry. And it's like the slowest song possible. And so I'm having this, and I did it at the beginning of the fight because I was like, I'll give myself a cool tune for this fight, and it's just this like all I can think of, like just big mouth Billy Bass Fish like singing to me. I love the conceit of it as well. I did like the idea that you play as like the leader. I think that I'm with you, Steph. Like I don't exactly know what it would be that would make the combat more dynamic for me, but I guess I liked the idea that you would, like, I guess as you in the story, as Peter becomes a better leader, you too are inherently becoming better because you're just getting better at the game yourself. You are becoming a better leader as well. So I kind of liked that as an idea. Did you guys have lots of bugs in this one?
Yes. Yeah. I had actually the Huddle mechanic was bugged a number of times for me, where like I would huddle and they'd all rush forward, and then I couldn't do anything, and we would just stood there in silence. And then I had, if I initiated the Huddle, then we came back out of it, and I was frozen. And then I had boss fights that just didn't start, where like they just kind of stood there and everyone started yelling their words, but I couldn't do anything.
Drax wouldn't put down the thing he was carrying puzzle, and he just wouldn't throw it down anywhere. And I was like, all right, so that was one reload, but yeah, not too many, I think.
I didn't have anything particularly major throughout. I did have a couple of times I launched the game I played through on Xbox Series X. It's just framing up. It got to the point where it was like just choking to the point of being like 15 frames. And
I got that too, but I thought
booting from what's the save mode?
Like the
thing?
hibernation.
Totally.
Yeah.
That happened to me as well, and I
rebooted.
Yeah, I did the same thing. I
Cleared
think
it right up?
that's happened to me before, where it's like if you've had it load from that save state, like it just like it hits a certain point where it's like I can't do this. I can't do this.
The ledges.
Yeah, I was watching you do those ones. That was frustrating.
Getting stuck on those.
Yeah,
was so frustrating.
Yeah.
And
I also had
because there was a costume on the other side you wanted so bad.
I know. I needed it. The other bug that I had was brilliant. It was the final boss. Well, what I thought was the final boss. Obviously, there's the little twist of the end, but in the cutscene, Peter Quill was not holding his gun.
Yes.
and then in the entire fight, he was not holding his gun.
Oh, no. Just finger guns.
Yeah.
To be fair, that's what he's doing on the cover art, so...
Yeah.
I had a few. I got stuck in geography, geometry a couple of times. I was stuck in geography as well. I couldn't name countries. But my favorite one, I had one on the Milano. I had a conversation with Drax, and then I hopped up, and Peter's like, "All right, good chat, man," and then turns around and walks off. And then I stop and turn behind me, and Drax is just standing there. I'm like, oh, hi. And I thought that it was part of the narrative that he's following me. But no, it was a bug. And he would just follow me around the ship, completely like 1.5 steps behind me the whole time. I would go to other characters and have conversations, and he would come in and stand in the conversation with them. And it would be, but because he wasn't supposed to be there, he would stand generally opposite me, so next to the character, and he would start blocking their light. So like I'm having a conversation where the person's face is almost completely in shadow because he's standing in front of the light source, and then he's just staring at me and kind of occasionally like touching his swords, and I'm just like, you're planning something, man.
To be fair, that is totally in character for Drax. It's like it is definitely something you'd expect.
It totally is. But yeah, I do think that the I've seen some narrative around the idea that like this game went on sale pretty early, like it's already pretty cheap to get in some places, so that can be a sign that it didn't necessarily sell very, very well, which I'm really disappointed about, because I do think that like looking at this, while I think there's so much that I love about it, there are the edges where I do feel like you can feel where the budget, where they I think properly focus the budget on the things that they can really make work. And as I was playing it, I'm having so much fun, but I'm also going like, I cannot wait for the next
sequel
version of this. Yes,
Yeah.
Totally.
Like the sequel of this. If they get a sequel, and God, I hope they do. I just think it will be They have such a strong foundation, and they know how to tell a story. They know how to deliver a story. And if they just nail down some of that polished stuff and actually go like, if you give me Uncharted-y cutscenes and some sort of extremely dynamic combat system built off this, and it's already like 70% there, it could be one of my favorite games of all time, because I love this universe so much, and I do not like the Guardians.
You're right when you talk, Nick, about like with the budget going, like as you said, you see a few cracks, you see texture pops, you see some weird sort of clipping and all that kind of stuff. But in terms of where the money's been spent, in terms of the art direction and the world building and some of the polish, in terms of where it's gone, in terms of like narrative and story threads, and
it's like the memorable stuff. They put the effort into the things where you walk away and go, oh yeah, I'm going to remember this.
Like
for a
in
while.
my mind, it's more polished, because I remember the kind of awe-inspiring vistas and areas of it that at the top. The thing I loved about the idea of the Guardians being this kind of like just the fun end of the universe, and like, yeah, it totally feels like that's where they put it all. Pete, your reactions while you were playing it in the bits I watched as well were like to the same extent of just like awestruck in where they decided to put a lot of that polish, I guess.
Yeah, it has that classic, which, I mean, it's all CG, obviously, but it almost had that classic, like, matte painting look to it, or at least design philosophy. And I think Destiny is the other game that does skyboxes in a way that you just stop and stare at them. Dark Souls does it with some of its areas. But this, every time I walked into landed on a new planet or walked into a new area, it was like, let me just take in the design of this. Because, yeah, again, like, I think the places where it feels cheap stand out in the trailer as well. But what you don't see is just how much care was put into the game. Like, the people that made this were clearly so in love with what they were doing. There's things in here that don't need to be in here, that are just touches that are so beautiful. From, like, I mean, this is just a funny moment as a cutscene, but it's like that's an example of just like them doing something so well. Like it's a joke of it's a physical joke that could totally not work with some of the other jankiness of the animation or whatever. But it's like they've really worked out what they can do and execute well when it's a story beat.
I think
that's why they stand up so well.
I love too the just like really big, broad, cool, interesting sci-fi concepts as well. I think created such a great backdrop for the adventure that they go on. I love the idea of this kind of faith energy and how that was tied into the story of Peter and his relationship and Nikki and everything. That was really cool. All the different planets they visited, like every step of the journey they went on really made you feel like you went on a proper like hero's journey where you had to kind of bargain and learn new things and solve a bunch of different problems before you could kind of move towards the kind of end goal. But all of it felt really unique and weird and cool and creative in a way that I feel like Guardians really leans into, and that it's like it's sci-fi, but it's quirky, and there's a llama on your ship, and there's all this like weird ideas going into there, like because nothing really is off the table when you're creating this kind of universe. And I liked to like, you know, when you think about all the money going into the things that you remember and those details, it's so true. And the little things that I just became obsessed with hunting down those little moments where you could find props or things that you could take back to the ship or like find, you know, secret things that would give you a little bit more information, or outfits. Yeah. And I think that even with the voice acting, like when you look at like Groot as a character, for example, obviously he's the hardest to get to know because he has only one line of dialogue, but like, you know, they could have very easily just put that voice actor in a room and just got him to say, I am Groot, like a bunch of different ways, and that was the end of it. But they clearly adapted those voice lines to the situation. Like there was one moment where I walked in and I was like, is anyone here? Hello? And then Groot goes, I am Groot. And it's like, they would have had to have had that line specific for that moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was.
I wonder how they do the dialogue for him, like whether they write a line, a response.
Yeah.
Like as though there was a response coming from like a child or something. Like, I don't know how deep they would go with it, because obviously they're not going to write a paragraph because he's only going to say 3 words. But like, there's just so much depth to in the emotion of the response to everything. Like he's the most mature character.
I wouldn't be sure on that, because I was reading an interview with Mary DeMal, who was the narrative designer, like the lead narrative designer on the game, and she was saying that this was unique in terms of the writing team was basically working on the game the whole time. The writing team was like working on, and normally in a game it's like you have the writing team, they write a bones, gameplay comes in, figure this out, and then bring back writing and go, okay, like get us between these things. And writing was actually there the whole time. And she said that in one conversation, Rocket says to Gamora, references that they've done, I think it was 17 missions together so far, they counted. And the narrative team actually plotted out and came up with all 17 previous missions that they went on and what happened on them, and all of that was built in the idea of like, this is now how these characters will interact with each other based on what happened on all 17 previous missions. So it's very likely that they wrote out all of Groot's dialogue and then just cut it for I am Groot. And I love that, and I just think I think it's a truly tremendous job when it comes to just also just letting the story breathe. Like it's so rare in video games that that you get moments of lightness, breath, comedy, emotion, space, and this whole game is that. Like, take that out, you probably lose 2 hours of the game. It's incredible.
I think to your point, Steph, when you were saying about the idea of the faith energy being the driving force behind the big bad in it, I was really impressed from a narrative standpoint of what that big bad was, I think it was like a really interesting take on what could be a big laser in the sky or a big bad guy trying to take over the galaxy. It's like, no, it was this sort of organized religion that was trying to promise things to people and like calling it the promise and having all. It's like it was a great device to set up all these characters having internal conflict that needed to be resolved.
Especially because they've all got some kind of trauma, right? Or someone that they've lost or grief. And the fact that this thing kind of targets that and finds that vulnerability in people makes you think anyone would be susceptible to that.
But it did
so when Drax gets taken by it, I was like, oh shit, how are we going to fix this issue?
But it didn't feel like a cheap narrative device, I think, like in the way that if that wasn't the driving force behind it, having all these characters go through moments of revelation, I think would have felt forced. But I thought it was a really clever way to tie it to like the actual sort of the overall mission of what this whole story was about, and kind of unexpectedly deep and meaningful versus just, as I said, what was his name, Ranker or what? Raker wasn't just like
Raker,
it wasn't just using it to rule. It's like it was actually being used with purpose and kind of super emotional.
The only crappy part about that for me was that Nikki was the big bad for so much of the game, or like part of it, because I loved her. So it was the right thing to do narratively. Like it was it totally works. Yeah. But I loved her as a character when she was introduced, and I was like, oh, we're gonna have this like little kid hanging out with us the whole time.
It's gonna be like Joel and Ellie.
Totally. But she's gonna show us up, and she's gonna be so useful. And then it's like
she gets taken.
Some sequel shit.
Yeah,
totally. And I was so happy with the ending of like, my yes, put her in there.
One thing I do find a little bit cheap, and I understand why it has to be done as like a metaphor and stuff like that, but I hate it when they put you in a position where like, you know, you're in front of your mother and she's saying, let's just stay here with me and we'll be here forever. And you have to like shoot her.
Pull the trigger.
Especially, and they make you do it. It's like, because at first, you know, I tried not doing it and then actually, I think
you got stuck at that awkward hug, push away.
No. It basically gives you an end state where it was like, it's like, do you want to rethink your choice or do you want to just accept the promise? And I was like, okay, well, I don't want to accept the fucking promise. But like, I was annoyed that when I chose not to kill her, that there was no other option. Like I couldn't just say like, I have to reject this isn't real and blah blah, walk away. Like I had to shoot my mum in the face, and that sucks. Like I feel like when a game makes you do that, it feels like a shitty thing to make you do, to make you feel something. So I didn't like that, but but the rest of it I thought was pretty cool in terms of like having the idea of like religion being used as a tool to control people, but kind of reframed in this kind of sci-fi context. It was a cool idea, and it was a cool idea, and it worked really well, and it was like sufficiently scary.
That's kind of what I was thinking. It was emotional and kind of scary. It was like that's a good threat, I think, for the galaxy.
Yeah, and you know, the age-old Ludo narrative dissonance of like, we murder 1 million people on the way through this game who have suffered the same thing that we did, in that they've been given something that they desire deeply, and we just kill them because of it.
And a third of the game is built around like, go save Drax, go save Nikki, because we know them and they've been taken over by this, but everyone else, we don't know them. So
it's fine, we'll just kill them. That's something you need to separate from. But like, I just think it's so believable and it's so easy to empathize with the people that have like from the story beats. Even Raker at the end, you understand why he is building this church, because he's lost his family too and wants to spend his time with them. So that's what this thing gives him. So it's like, I just think that was all really, really deftly handled.
And props to like all the side characters in it, both from the voice acting standpoint, but like there were characters in this, obviously, that people who know Guardians, who know the comic books and stuff would recognize. I think, you know, having only watched the films, it's like, I fucking loved Mantis. She was so great. Like she's so wonderful. But then like
Lady Hellbender, I thought was so great.
She was amazing. And then like they were all great. Like Cosmo, Cosmort, or just Cosmo, was it?
Cosmo.
Again, seeing that and going, what the fuck am I watching? But I'm like, I took solace in the fact that I'm like, this is a Guardians thing. It must be. This must be something that little Will would be like, oh, everyone knows that that's a dog that runs nowhere. And you're like, what? But I love this. And it's like, again,
the scene with Cosmo where they're confronting him to break out of the promise.
Oh my God.
It's talking about,
it was so sweet and hilarious at the same time.
I just have leash for walkies and for fetching. It's just like, oh my God, I want to be a dog.
Must protect.
So good.
At one point, he referred to the deception as the false stick, which I thought was great.
I mean, I've definitely laughed at this game more than I have in a video game in such a long time. There were so many times I actually laughed out loud. The only other little quibble I have with it, and we're seeing a lot of it in this gameplay, is the detective mode thing. I really don't like detective mode anymore because I just am like, I don't want to live in this, but I have to live in this in order to like move through at an efficient pace.
The puzzles are my least favorite, and having to make a thing where it's like, well, either make the puzzle make me use my brain, don't make me use a visor to solve a puzzle, because it's not really a puzzle anymore. It's just a set of blocks in my way.
And it's actually like, that's totally, because the problem I generally have with the detective vision thing is it goes, turn this on, now 90% of this space is actually irrelevant. So we're just pointing a big arrow at the thing that you need to do. And it's like, I would have actually preferred you just point the big arrow in real life.
Yeah.
Or like I click detective vision and someone pulls my focus towards something would even be better than just the highlight thing. Yeah.
It makes you then have to spend so much time in that annoying pink vision, otherwise you miss stuff. One thing I wish I'd done, and if anyone in the chat intends to play this still, I wish I had put points into the finding the little things that you upgrade your gun and visor and stuff with, because once I upgraded that, I didn't have to be turning on the detective vision to see those little glowing yellow piles. It would just come up with an icon on your screen that would be like, oh, there's some stuff over there. Right. Yeah. And it was like, I could have spent so much less time in dumb detective vision and upgraded my shit a lot earlier, because I thought I was pretty good at finding that stuff, but there's actually fucking heaps of it everywhere. And you just don't see it because you're kind of like not going around this one corner or something. So I really wish I'd turned that on earlier, and that would have given me a more enjoyable experience, I think, to not have to use detective vision so much.
I really like that about this map design as well. Like, I always get a kick out of like going right when all the game design says go left, because you know
all the characters are standing, and all the characters are just standing at the entrance.
Like
the next
and they had nice voice lines for that as well. They'd be like, Peter, where are you going? And he's like, I just need a minute. I think I just need to check something or whatever. Like he would explain that he's going off to just try and find something useful, you know?
The one thing that I've seen a lot of people in our Discord talking about how they're replaying the game, and this is something that I do not do anymore. But I saw Sassless in our Discord said, I played this on PS5 while my partner played on Xbox in the next room. It was really cool to see whenever we took breaks how little interactive choices changed the game for us. I presented Rocket to Lady Hellbender and he chose Groot and got a completely different section to play. I sang with Lipless and got the Cosmo Mind Maze. He didn't. And I was going to ask, I wonder how much variety there was. Like, for context, I presented Rocket as the monster, and then and this Cosmo Mind Maze. I don't know exactly what that is. Is that the prison thing that they're talking about?
I presented Groot, and I don't know what the Mind Maze is either. I didn't realize there was that much stuff happening also. And then when Peter would walk in, because he'd already finished it, and he would see where I was up to, he was like, "Oh, this is not." At one point, I didn't convince the what do you call the organization?
Nova
Corps?
The Nova Corps. I didn't convince them successfully to help me. And I was like, Peter, I didn't convince him to help me. And he was like, oh, no. And I was like, what do you mean, oh, no?
Is that when you're talking to mind?
They helped me a lot at the end.
Yeah, he was like, they were like a pretty pivotal part of the fight at the end. And I was like, oh, no.
So,
well, I do have that vibe of, how when everyone comes to help through the end section, whether or not that's a kind of Mass Effect 2 vibe of like, did you go and get all your allegiances to...
Yeah. Well, The Witcher has something similar where it's like who stands beside you at the end is kind of dependent on the choices that you make. Yeah. But I also think like some of the choices were kind of like I just would sort of watch a cutscene and put my controller down and then be like, oh shit, and then I would just miss a dialogue option. So I think some of the choices I made were just because I was.
It was nice how they didn't all
attention.
feel as some felt. It was muddy in terms of what was inconsequential and what had strong consequence to it. And I think that was clever. I don't think it was nice that it wasn't always just like, this is a really obvious left and right moment. It did feel because there were so many times that you did get an option to talk, and having to do it so many times where it's mundane or it's just like, do you want to be jokey or do you want to be serious? And then it's like, oh wait, no, now I'm steering towards a decision. And I think that's clever because it steers you away from that Mass Effect-y vibe of like Paragon Renegade. Pete and I talked about it a while ago, saying it didn't feel like Walking Dead. They will remember this and they don't. It's like it genuinely felt like I was just constantly chatting to them, and then suddenly something would happen. It
definitely felt like there were very clear right or wrong answers when you were sort of trying to help Nikki get out of the promise at the end. So I wonder what would have happened if you'd chosen the wrong ones. You know,
I think what the game did really well was make it feel like you were having making really impactful decisions, but really it's quite linear.
Yeah,
okay. And the little things, like you didn't get Novacore to help. All that Novacore did for me at the end was they rock up and do like a strafing run. They're off helping fight out in space, which doesn't impact the story, but they do like a bombing run that kills a bunch of big things that I would have had to fight in a wave mode. It's like I basically skipped one wave mode section and progressed through the end faster.
I had Lady Hellbender and her giant dragon do stuff like that. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, which looked like that was pretty pivotal to the actual main story.
Yeah, that was. Everyone had to do that. Yeah.
Everyone had that. Okay, cool.
I think that I didn't do this Cosmo Mind Maze. I'm just seeing in chat people saying like there was a part where you like follow puppies or something. Like I never ended up doing that. So there are little things.
Did you guys pay the fine?
No, and then my ship just floated.
I still might win the lottery on Nowhere, so we're still waiting for the results to come back.
I assume that's like a little choice that leads to a bunch of like 4 different little post-credit things.
Yeah. I spent my fine money on the doll for Gamora, so I feel like that was a worthy trade.
Yeah, that's good too. I think to the final point on what you said, Pete, about the illusion. I think that the smart thing that it did was give it was different emotional approaches in which your Peter is approaching a situation.
Yeah.
So most of the time it was like, yeah, you're going to end up at the same spot, but it's actually the kind of person that he is being around other people that you are choosing to have. And that person is not necessarily, and I really appreciate this, as you said, Gus, is not good or bad. Like he's not aggressive or passive. He is, am I going to take an empathetic approach to you or a pragmatic thing? Am I going to like inspire you or try to drag you back into line? So I really appreciated the nuance that is there.
Did that just the one question I had about everyone else's playthroughs was near the beginning when I feel like it was something I did to Rocket that I really pissed him off and we had a massive falling out. Was that part of the main narrative? Or did that something that
I think it was everyone I have heard has gone because at the beginning I didn't get Drax to throw Rocket. I did everything to agree with Rocket, and Rocket still took a hard turn on me and then got pissed and disappeared with Groot and that sort of thing. And I think everyone I've heard has been like, Rocket got pissed at me for no reason.
I made Drax throw him, so I didn't feel that weird.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
I think for the team to feel effective and for you to feel that sort of satisfying sense of leadership, you need to have those moments of real discord where it feels like the gang is almost like on the precipice of breaking up, so that you can kind of have the experience of bringing everyone back together so they remember why you're so good when you work as a team. And so I feel like I can see why that was a choice that was made, because I remember in that moment feeling really like, oh my gosh, I've made this happen and it's my fault that everyone's not getting along, and how am I going to fix this? And that was obviously like something that happens to everyone.
I'm still glad that it felt like 80% of the game they were all getting along, that it wasn't that dragged out for the whole thing. Kind of like for me, when the movies go wrong is they're always bickering and always fighting, and I'm kind of like, I really like you guys as a group. Whereas here, 80% of the time they are friends, and I'm just like, gosh, it was just refreshing in a game, especially where to have 4 other characters with you at all times, versus every video game I play has one person walking with me, having this one bit of back and forth, and then they leave and I meet someone else, and it's like having this many voices I want in all my future games.
I
it's
know,
like,
I felt like
I'm going to feel lonely.
It did. Yeah, you get really attached. I think, Lucas Horatio, I feel like sums up the game best for all of us, which is, I would describe this game like the now gone Thunderbolt roller coaster from Dreamworld. A very rough ride. My body is sore and my neck is killing me after it was done, but I was genuinely laughing along the whole way, so I go for another ride. No, I think that's so true. I so want a sequel for this. I'm so excited to see what they do next, and I really hope it sells enough. And enough people play it. I think it could be one of those games that will pop up on a few Game of the Year, End of Year lists, whether it's for narrative or performance or even just Game of the Year, that it might inspire people picking it up early next year or over Christmas or something, and hopefully those sales get up there.
Yeah, really good holiday
I think
play.
there are plans for it to land on Game Pass as well.
Oh, really?
I believe so. Maybe I'm misremembering and attaching that to this game, and it's not actually this game, but...
I don't have that information, but it could be. It totally could be, which would be a great guarantee because it'll definitely get something else then. Of course, we at the end of every Game Club episode, we do have a little competition. This one is no different. The winners of the competition get a copy of a Game Club notebook and a back pocket mug, both of which need to be printed, supply chain willing. But they also get a copy of the next Game Club game, whatever that is, that we buy them. And so this person who wins will get the same. The competition that we ran for this one was we wanted you to tell us the Back Pocket crew are in the middle of a fight with a bunch of space assholes. They're beaten, bruised, overrun. They huddle up. What is the pep talk you give them to inspire victory? And Gus has got that pose right there. We got a lot of fantastic entries. We've whittled it down to three runners up, and the prize winner. So Gus, why don't you start us off with our first runner up?
Certainly. First runner up is Bluey, who I think is in the chat as well tonight. Bluey, thank you for your entry. Your pep talk is, Gus, get your flarking... I won't do the accent, I'm sorry. Gus, get your flarking ass up and shake that magic butt to distract them. Steph, you're the glue, so why am I doing the pep talk? Nick, you have the attitude of Rocket Raccoon, but the humor of a 14-year-old boy who just learned to flark and swear, so start biting some ears. And Peter, you're a Halo vet, so get out there and start throwing some Hail Marys. To which the song would be... no, I haven't thought.
Proud Mary.
Rock you like a hurricane. There you go.
Steph, runner-up number 2.
I had runner-up number 2 from Chaotic Owl. And their pep talk goes like this. When things look dire, when Peter's out of tape, and Gus's luscious beard is disheveled, do we give up? No, because we have Back Pocket, and we give in to no one. We didn't make a show of quality entertainment and raunchy humor to be beaten by some space goons. Both the ABC and Channel 7 couldn't contain our creative skills. And they're worse than these guys. So, Steph, break out your Viking war paint, and Nick, prepare your wittiest one-liners, because tonight we demonstrate why this podcast at 7 p.m. Thursday night on ADT is the best in the galaxy in this time slot.
Excellent work, Chaotic Owl. Peter, runner-up number 3.
We all need to stare
3.
into the camera like we're the characters in the thing, like while we're waiting. Go, Peter.
Number 3 is from Callie B. And they're simple but very effective. I've got Mexican being delivered for us back at the base. We've got 10 minutes.
And it will still turn up late, and we'll have to eat it during the fight.
It'll be cold.
And Nick will kick the chips across the room.
I will. I absolutely will. Very good runners-up, but there can only be one winner. And the winner for this episode of the Game Club is Nano Jeans. Congratulations, Nano Jeans, with your entry, the inspirational speech as we all huddle up, about to be beaten, but managing to forge on. Listen here, you pieces of shit. Stop it. No shenanigans. Stops to fix camera angle. Now remember, the boobs are to be looked at. Let's back it out and get in there.
Yeah.
And it's just perfect. It's just so
It's everything.
The fact that the final line before getting out there is, now remember the boobs are to be looked at, is exactly what I want to hear when I'm in the middle of a fight with a bunch of space aliens. So
fantastic.
congratulations, Nano Jeans. You get yourself a mug, you get yourself a book, and you get yourself a copy of the next Game Club game, which we don't know what that is because this is the last Game Club for 2021. So we will decide on that game when we come back in 2022. We do have some more back pocket content coming your way before the end of the year, but no more Game Club episodes. So you can all take a break. But Nano Jeans, I will reach out to you and still you can decide whether or not we just give you a game of your choice now, if there's something you're wanting to play that came out this year, or you can wait until next year and pick the Game Club game that we'll be doing next year. So I'll reach out. You can let me know. But thank you very much, everyone, for watching tonight. Thank you, Gus, Steph, Pete. Thank you, Eidos Montreal, for delivering one of the biggest surprises of the year.
Absolutely.
For sure.
And a game with a character that I thought was awesome or inspiring, amazing, audibly brilliant in a way that only Peter could. What a character, Peter.
I did think of it.
Beautiful, brilliant, just bodacious in every way. I love it.
His warlocking great.
I think the first time Warlock appeared on screen, I was like, that's fucking Gus.
I did too. Oh my god.
Here he goes.
Chest hair and everything.
His illustrious alliteration illuminated every line. And I love him.
And I do think that the saying it was one of the biggest surprises of the year. I think that there's been lots of games that came out of nowhere and surprised us, but I think a truly sweet surprise is a game that you feel like you've written off, but then turns out to be great. Yeah. A game that comes out and you're like, I don't know about this. This doesn't look very good, and then turns out to be amazing. Is the sweetest surprise of all.
Yeah, we used to have a segment when we were making Good Game in the end of the year specials that was big claim, lame game. Famously given to games like Star Wars: The Force Unleashed, and I'm sure you can think of your own examples of that. But like, we never had an example of the opposite of like, this
no claim, big game,
no claim. Hit game.
I think we
Looks
didn't,
lame,
we didn't
game.
have a catchy title, but I think we had like biggest surprise or something like that.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Well, this definitely gets it because this was just like
gets that award.
Hands
a
down.
delight.
All right, and we need to get some sleep. So thank you very much, everyone, for watching and hanging out tonight. Head to the Discord for more Guardians of the Galaxy chat in the Game Club channel there on the Discord. Thank you very much to the mods for making sure everyone is polite tonight. But who wouldn't be polite? Because I'm looking at these names, and these are the people. These are our Guardians of the Galaxy in the chat right now. You're all the greatest. Thank you very much for hanging out tonight, and we'll be back with more back content later on this week, because it's Sunday night. Sunday's the beginning of the week in some weird religious calendars. Good night.